Hey, Mr. Green. Good morning. Okay, good morning. I know I was trying to get you today, and we couldn't pull it off, but I'm glad to be able to move this forward. So as you know, we're here to talk about the future of the municipal auditorium. I have members of my team who are here with me this morning, of course, with capital projects, Vince, and Lenitra Hassan. Lenitra is from our project delivery unit, multiple things that I have tapped her skill set, her leadership, particularly around infrastructure as well, keeping us straight relative to FEMA reimbursements, FEMA submittals, you name it, Lenitra is it. And we have learned from what, just kind of focusing on grants, reimbursements, FEMA and the like, and moving forward with the opportunity for additional federal money, but even just managing what we have in many departments throughout city government, it has been beneficial to us to look at someone, overseeing all of those grants at that level. So we're all straight. And what we have found just through the past couple of years, if departments, for example, have an issue run up with FEMA and the federal government in terms of reporting and the like, and this can go way back. When I got in, we had to deal with something that was from '08. And HUD said, oh, you have to pay us back. We said, oh no, we're gonna find this, and we worked it out, and we did. But you need someone who understands it, and I found that leadership in Miss Lenitra. So thank you so much, and give us some love, because it matters. Always building and moving forward. But we are here to talk about the process, one that we've been through, but also where we're going from this point forward. You know that I met with you all in December, I want to say, December of 2021. In July? No, December was when we had our last meeting with SOS.
December 28th.
That's it. So in July, I met with you all, and we talked through the process that we had to undergo. We talked about the FEMA dollars that were attached to municipal auditorium. We talked about how those dollars needed to advance the redevelopment of municipal regardless of what it would be. And then we also talked about, and I listened a lot. I listened to you all share what the vision you all had for municipal auditorium, and not just you, but you're present and you have been ever present. But we know that it's a larger scope, larger community in terms of involving the community in the future of municipal auditorium. However, I listened. And from that, I'm gonna share with you, Miss Sabrina came in, she was at the meeting, she was upset, she walked out, she came back in. But Miss Sabrina, when you did that, and what you were saying to me, this is what I was saying, I can't do everything. I can't take on everything. You have to pick and choose, cans that you're gonna pick up because you wanna get it done. And it's not a show, but you can't do it all. And I said, listen, I'm focusing on the infrastructure, making sure this infrastructure roll, 1% of the money was when we got here. We know that we have to get it done. It's on deadline. I got to do it. Had to focus on sewage and water board. That's tied to infrastructure as well. Board water advisories, you name it. Hey, we got to do it. Had 4 interim directors until I selected the one who's been with us for 3 years, making progress. Picked up that can. Had to focus on youth and families and public safety in our community. And thank God our city recently passed a millage for early childhood education, early learners in our community. Every kid having a seat. Check. Picked up that. Getting it done. So multiple things. Smoking orders. Making sure smoke free. Saving lives. Pandemic. All of these things. So that's all tied to my track record and my service as being your mayor, because I am totally committed to picking up things, getting it done, and being transformational, but also understanding I can't do it all. And we gotta have a new city hall. Have to. Not luxury, have to. But when Sabrina listened to me with all of this, got all riled up, left, came back with your spirit and your true fashion, like your big G. And she said, you're gonna sit there and stand there and tell me what you can't do? you did this in Broadmoor, you did this, you did that. And now, something so important to this community, and at this time, and you say what you can't do, I listened to that. But not only did I listen to that, I took some time and I did my own little research. I don't need to do research on New Orleans. I know the fabric of this community, the most Afrocentric city in the United States of America, speaks for itself, talks for herself, no doubt about it, no matter where you go in the world. And I've learned that even more so as mayor. But when I think about what we can do, and I went to DC and I spent a little time at the museum there. I did. I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time even talking to other community leaders, not just in New Orleans, but those who are from here that are all over the world. And then also those who found themselves on the list of being supporters of not a city hall, but they're like, wait a minute, how'd I get on the list? But even speaking to them. Okay, so I did all of that in addition to saying to you at that meeting, you plan, create that vision. Let me see what it is. And not just in talk, but something that we can have a perspective and actually rally around to get it done. SOS, we had our meeting in December. A plan was provided, an overview, a real vision. Now I also asked for a financial plan, a financial metrics, how we gonna get it done. Things cost money, can't do anything without it, nothing without it. So we got the plan, no doubt, loved it. One thing it did not have was the financial components, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. Meaning, as I've learned, as I've grown, and as I'm willing to pick up this municipal auditorium, I have no doubt in my mind that if we're organized, if we're focused, if we're on the same page, and if we walk together on this, that we can accumulate the resources necessary to pull this off, meaning the entire vision. Doesn't mean that it's gonna happen all at one time, no. The only thing we have right now that we can stand on still remains the FEMA resources that were tied to municipal auditorium that I shared with you about. And also, I talked about, hey, this doesn't work, maybe we can redirect those dollars to another project. We're not doing that, I'm committed. But in that commitment, it still stands. We have to activate these FEMA resources tied to a municipal auditorium so that we can advance our vision, raise money, and make this happen. And so that's where we are right now. I'm gonna ask Vince to speak to you about our process thus far, meaning what does that look like? Yes, it will be an RFP process, no doubt about it. You know it has to be, Yes, advancing on this RFP will be utilizing and activating the FEMA dollars that are tied to this building, which is around $34 million, in addition to additional dollars that are needed even in the build outs. We talked about this as well. FEMA will get us a little bit further, but we want to ensure we're building for the future here. We got to be smart about it. One shot. So in building for the future, we want to make sure that the building is sustainable, future flooding, water intrusion, everything. But FEMA requires that anyway. That's why we have the money. So we want to do that portion. We want to do it right, but at the same time, plan for the future in regards to this RFP with the developer in partnership. This is an RFP. You all, community, will be a part of it every step of the way, but this is how we have to move in order to activate the redevelopment of municipal auditorium, utilize the seed money is what I'm calling it, to move your vision and our collective vision forward. There's one caveat. So, whoa, don't worry. You all know that preservation of our culture is rooted in how we preserve our documents, how we preserve our archives as a city. The New Orleans Public Library is that body, meaning that what do we call it? Is the repository for the city, officially. And you all know that we've seen significant damage and impacts to our archives, Hurricane Katrina. And a part of that, moving forward, building for the future, is making sure that we have a repository that is sustainable for the future, collecting our culture, all of our artifacts and the like. So the only caveat as it relates to municipal auditorium and its redevelopment, cultural center, using it how we talk or how you all have brought forth, is ensuring that this archive is also housed in Municipal Auditorium as we're uplifting culture, as we're uplifting all the things that make the city great. So that's the archival is in Vince. When Vince talks about it, you can get me straight on it. It's about $18 to $19 million is a line item relative to investing in archives for the city, which is our culture. That would be a line item that could be leveraged with the federal money and a direct infusion of public dollar for Municipal Auditorium. Right now, the public dollar we have is FEMA. We're having to tie in a little bit more, about $10 million, to kind of build, to take the FEMA project, the FEMA scope a little bit further for sustainable, intrusion, water intrusion, what I talked about. So I have authorized about $10 million to go on top of that FEMA dollar so that we can, again, prevent the building from any type of disarray moving forward. But other than that, it's about a large gap that we know that we'll have to fundraise around, and I'm hopeful, and I'm saying I hope that all those folks who were saying what we needed to do and making speeches and getting on the letter, all of that now they can be activated to help raise some money and make this a reality. Talk is cheap. So with that, I'm gonna turn my seat down, and I'm gonna turn it over to Vince. We'll walk through what that RFP would need to look like based on hearing your voices, making sure that the presentation and the scope that you all submitted to us will be the basis actually for the RFP. So it's all embedded in there, but let me be quiet and turn it over to you, Vince.
Thanks, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. Vince Smith, Director of Capital Projects. The Mayor kind of stole my thunder and summarized everything that I was going to talk about to you guys about. But as she mentioned, we looked at the proposal that you guys submitted to us. The mayor highly supported it, and it was very well. It was put together very well. Spring.
So we've been talking about a proposal, but it was a preliminary from responses that we have gotten through community engagement.
Right.
So in terms of it being a complete vision, we're not there yet, but
Yeah,
that's part of the conversation, which is good.
It was good.
Yes.
It was enough to get us here.
To frame
Gotcha.
the vision.
Yes.
Okay. So, with that, the mayor said, okay, how do we make this happen? We pulled in the expertise of Jeff Schwartz, our Economic Development Director. We've got several people, Cindy Connick with NOBC, but we had several people come in and talk about, okay, how do we respond? And as the mayor mentioned, we thought the best way to accomplish this was to engage a two-phase strategy. One was to develop an RFP, RFQ, to solicit developers, not only locally, but nationwide, because this is a great project. And what we wanted to do was, once again, just create an RFQ that could get a developer in here that had the capacity to not only take the vision and bring it to reality, but also have the resources, not only for the auditorium, but to master plan for for the Armstrong Park site, to take the Treme community under consideration as well. And once again, they have the resources and the bench strength professionally to make it happen. One of the critical components of the RFP is, of course, community engagement, engaging you guys. We've written it in such a way that we are requesting, a plan that demonstrates capacity and the ability to engage the community in such a way that, there is true dialogue, true communication, to understand the community's passion, concern, respect for that site, and also, once again, just the opportunity through their expertise to bring, to allow us to attract, as this is going to be a public-private venture. And part of the vision that you guys had, was not only for exhibition and entertainment space, but for commercial space as well. That's the focus that we need to go in regarding the development RFP. I talked about a parallel track. We've got deadlines that we have to reach to satisfy FEMA requirements. So what we want to do along with the development track is the city take the FEMA piece, the HMP hardening piece, replacing the roof, getting the building into a place where it has enough conditioning in it to stop, environmental hazardous growth in the building. The mayor talked about us having to invest additional money in the building along with the FEMA funding because, as we all know, there's a lot of mold growth and there are a lot of environmental hazards that we got to mediate. FEMA didn't pay, they didn't pay for that, so we're going to have to invest in that as well. We want to launch out on that at the same time so that we can be handling that piece, get it under construction and moving alongside of the development piece. And of course, we got to do it in a way where they complement one another, because that's one of FEMA's concerns is, okay, you can't white box this project. You can't take our money and do something with it and then walk away.
We have to be smart about it.
Right.
And not only that, we have to be smart about it, understanding where we are, where we live, and we're at the front lines of climate change. So it's not a matter of if, it's when, and what comes our way in the life. So whatever we do in terms of advancing and spending this FEMA money, it has to still remain, meaning the improvements have to remain in place as we fundraise and do whatever is necessary to make the overall vision a reality. We don't know how long it's going to take. Now, of course, hey, I want this done as soon as possible. No doubt about it. But let's be realistic as well. Let's be reasonable. And in being reasonable, I want to make sure that the money is spent wisely. It is sustaining that building. If it takes a year, 2 years, 3 years, who knows, to finish the complement that we all are trying to get to, then we know that the money will not have been spent in vain, because it's only allowed us to keep that building sustained so that we can further our vision. The last thing we want to do is demonstrate what this city did after Hurricane Katrina, where FEMA came in, gave money. The mayor at the time did do some work on the site. Following that, nothing happened. Then we got Gustav and the like. Gustav came, damaged the building. The next mayor after that said, we're not doing anything. Then the next time it was arbitration. That's when the money was reduced from almost to about maybe 100 to what we are dealing with now. Through arbitration, we lost. And so this is how we kind of got here. And FEMA was able to say that the derelict of that building was caused, in terms of harm, the greatest harm was between 2010 and moving up to where we are now, because nothing was done. But they did clean it up just for arbitration, but the judges looked at that and said, okay, you just did that because you were fighting against government, but we lost. So here we are.
And maybe you mentioned the phasing, and that's part of the expectation that we have for the development, that they've got the capacity and ability to help, bring this thing along within a phased strategy that once again allows us, that complements the work that we've got to do for FEMA, the auditorium, bring the auditorium into commerce, develop a master plan for the park that we can take, quite frankly, and get additional FEMA, money for hazard management that's available to us. So that'll create those opportunities as well. One thing about the RFP, Jeff, I want to ask you to just kind of jump in, but using Jeff's expertise and lessons learned from the Six Flags experience, one of the things that we wanted to do is have community the community have a seat on the selection committee. And two, when we bring developers in, for pre-selection meetings so that they can begin to understand what this project is, we would like you guys to consider giving presentations. We have a day where we bring developers in, and that's an opportunity for them to walk to Congo Square, hear you guys share about the history and the importance of the square. That's an opportunity to have, expressions of, the city's cultural life, so that we can help potential developers to understand what that site is. So that's one of the things that we, offer to you guys for consideration. The mayor talked about bringing in the archives. Once again, we're advancing that for your consideration because, we've got to move the archives. That is, the archives is a historical treasure, and it would be an attraction to the building as well. So, we thought that was, and it allows us to participate financially as
Meaning
well.
the city.
Right, the city.
Meaning the city, yes.
Right, that's the way,
Directly,
that's the way
which is
we,
important.
that's the way we participate financially in the project as well. So we wanted to advance that to you guys. We've had preliminary conversations with FEMA, and this is such a Rubik's Cube. Who do you talk to first, FEMA, the community? We've had conversations with Councilman King to let him know where we are with this. We've had communications with FEMA, and we let them know that, hey, we're telling you where we're going, but we got to reach. We got to sit with you guys and have before anything is in ink. We got to talk to you guys about these things, get your feedback, and once we come together, then we move forward officially. So, those are our thinking. Jeff, do you have anything you want to say about the RFP?
Well, I think you guys largely covered it. Obviously, the mayor and Vince. To put an exclamation point on it, the mayor has embraced the concept of this being a world-class cultural complex, befitting Congo Square Municipal Auditorium in the history of this community. And I think what they both have outlined is that there are confines within which we were working in, right? The city has a procurement process. We are going to be extending the boundaries of that to the greatest extent that we can to engage with community and to ensure that this process and the teams that hopefully respond are deeply engaged with community, that, as Vince just said, a two-way dialogue. It's really an opportunity, I think, for the vision that you all have sort of co-created here to actually see this come to fruition. And, as the mayor said, that it was a process getting here. I think that, we are being stewards of public dollars, of public property, and we've had to do a lot of work to navigate, frankly, and preserve these critical FEMA dollars, while also outlining how we actually get to what we all know can be built here. And so I think today is the first step in that process. I actually ran into Brian Lee at the park on Saturday. He was playing baseball with, I think, his nephew. And, he obviously, I know, has done a lot of work with you all in coming up with this concept. I think the sky is the limit. As the mayor said, once this goes out onto the street, and we can talk a little bit about timeline and some of the next steps, I'm sure that's some of your questions today. But thinking about what is a world-class team befitting a world-class cultural complex, I think you all have so much agency in helping create and inform the teams that even are going to be responding, right? The relationships that I know you all have nationally and locally. I think this is about bringing together the expertise that exists both on the ground here, which we know very much in this room and in this community, as well as folks who have done really groundbreaking work nationally and internationally. That is what's befitting. That's what the mayor's vision is for this site going forward. And so, I think we are working again within the RFP process, and we're happy to answer any questions about what that means from a technical perspective. But I think, if nothing else, we are here today in partnership in co-creating this world-class space.
Thank you, Jeff. And one other thing, we're gonna get to Q&A, Ms. Stelly. One of the things that I know, like you know, that we have people in this room that are experts in and of yourselves, architects, planners and the like, Ms. Deli and the like. But as we move through this process, there will be some, depending on how engaged folks become. And when you're going through a procurement process, at some point throughout that process, you may have to disengage in a different way. But we will get there, we'll deal with that when we get there, meaning we'll communicate effectively as we're moving through the process so that everyone knows if you're engaged and you're talking with a particular developer that's gonna respond, at some point you gotta back up, meaning from us, meaning government, because we cannot. I'm not doing all this for nothing. I'm sorry, I just, and I've said this, I just don't have time. And with everything that I know that I have on my plate for this city, that's transformational things, and this is one of them, we want to take it on to succeed, and not take it on to fight and to all this old foolishness. We can do it, I know we can. So all I'm saying is we'll all be accountability partners in the process because, again, we want to utilize experts who want to be engaged. If they want to participate and work with a particular development team, and you can, but there's a certain line that we cannot allow to be crossed when we're working on procurement practices. I'm just raising that right now, we're not even there yet. Another thing is that, this is near and dear to me. Historically, we just haven't done a great job of maintaining our assets around here. That's one of the reasons why we're talking about it in the auditorium right now. It's one of the reasons why we need a new city hall right now. I can go on and on, but this is our time. And so with the preservation of our archives even being positioned in this cultural mecca, it allows for, as Vince mentioned, the public dollar to go into the building, but it allows for city government to remain not only engaged, but the real responsibility of even helping to maintain. See, when it's separate, then it can go in a disarray, there's lack of accountability and the like. We don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And I'm saying that while my time is here and in this position, that you've heard from my mouth, that we can do a better job of maintaining our assets and moving forward and building for the future. That's what we have to do in our city. Much like the airport, that is the best thing going. We have to keep it great. Just don't drop millions and say forget about it. It's how we maintain. So with that, I'm ready for Q&A.
Okay, I just want to make it I want to jump in front and talk about timeline.
Okay.
Timeline for us, we are wrapping up the developer RFP, and we're working on the RFP for professional services for the FEMA piece as well. There will be two separate RFP proposals. We want to be ready, when we get to the place where, you guys are good, we're good. We want to go to FEMA and say, hey, we're ready to go. Now we're waiting on you to tell us to go. So we want to be in a position where when FEMA says go, the RFPs will go out. So however long it takes FEMA, that could be 30 days or whatever. So if that was 30 days, we want to be ready to have an RFP on the street in the next 30 days.
Sure, but we know our time is short, which it was short then.
Yeah.
So it's even shorter now, but we have a commitment from FEMA to work with us through this. That's how we can be here. And they care as well.
Yeah.
And the partners that are on the ground, they care. And care enough to say, okay, let's back off, let's give you some room, let's hear from the community. And my last meeting with FEMA quarterly was last week, Friday, I don't know, Thursday. And so we presented, we said, listen, we have this meeting coming up, it was planned. So just to demonstrate to them as well that we are working it. We're not just talking, the community is working it, and we're moving things along. So I feel very hopeful, I'm excited about it, but we do not have time. We just don't. The deadline for 2023 with the FEMA portion of the work on MA, that's the same thing, meaning nothing's changed there. Okay, so questions, Q&A. All right, who's gonna do this? Bam! All right, Ms. Deli, because you get first, and then Darcy, you, and then I'll Sandra.
So my question, probably for either one of you gentlemen, how much square footage is needed for the archives? What percentage of that is the available square footage in the building? And also, I'm assuming that the archives are gonna expand because history takes place every day, so.
We have to plan for that.
So
Yep.
what do we need now?
Yeah, and I should have got the exact number, for some reason.
Karen has it.
Karen has it. You got what?
Well, the report in the RFQ says it's about, I believe it was about 36,000, plus there's a percentage added for up till 2034, 35.
Okay, so
Building for the future. That's about right. And then another thing I know, Ms. Deli, just for your point, when we were on our call in the meeting, when there was, let me be quiet, I'll get back to it. Go ahead.
Clarity. So is the 35,000 what the archives requires?
Well, this is only the archives, that's 2 floors, basement floors, and the top floor, the 3rd floor of the New York Public Library, but we know that the city is storing stuff in third-party storage, in the basement.
Right, so
City
her
Hall.
square footage is not
So how much total?
accurate.
Right.
However, we will get that number, that square
So
footage.
what's the total square footage of the building?
Municipal auditorium?
Yeah.
It's, what, 300,
So it's about 10%.
The 278.
About
About
more than
10%.
10%.
I think
Alright.
it's 278.
78.
Of like, of groups.
Okay,
Okay, yeah.
10% of the net?
And I think, I think part of the vision here too, I actually had I won't go into too much detail, but I had a really impactful conversation with a gentleman whose great-great-grandmother's manumission papers are in the archives. And he had a conversation with me about the stories that are, as the mayor and Vince alluded to, the ability to think about not just having this be a repository, but a
Yes.
place of storytelling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think that if we do this right, that square footage can overlay with a lot of the other cultural, the spaces that you all I know have outlined and highlighted as areas
Right.
of cultural production, of storytelling, and so if we do this right, there's the ability to have that square footage blend, right? That there's certainly a hardened space
can
like the
be
mayor
built.
said, right?
But
right.
what about
Technology infrastructure.
future
Right.
proof? Because we want to essentially
Building for
future
the
proof.
future.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
So we really need maybe 40,000.
Potentially, or maybe it's 25 of like a hardened, space for the
Yeah.
archives.
We'll plan
Right.
through that, but yes,
Right.
you're right
Yeah,
on.
but yes, it's not an overwhelming
we are.
percentage of the square footage.
That is going to impact the finances too.
Indeed.
You're right on.
You make a good point, Jeff. There's an opportunity to blend
Right.
uses and save space actually.
Okay, down, and then I'm saying.
I'm a little bit concerned about the blending of opportunities and spaces, and let me just express to you why. The site here we're talking about is, for the city council and all the work we've been doing, is to be dedicated to the retention of the African culture and spiritual practices. The New Orleans archives expand well beyond that, right? And there's a lot of archives that's in the New Orleans archives that are totally against the retention of the African spiritual practice. There were riots that happened in the city back when Africans were mutilated. And all of that is a part of the city archives because it's the totality of everything that happens inside the city. This space we have talked about is to be called out for the African American experiences, the retention of the things that has emanated from that Congo Square place, and the things that has contributed to the vibrance, the sustainability of New Orleans, the culture of New Orleans. And so that's where I kind of see this cultural, world-class cultural complex that we're talking about here on this space. So I don't know how the totality of the city archives fits with inside that environment. The council has passed a motion in the ordinance that basically says that this space is to be dedicated to that purpose. And if we allow the city archives to come in there, that conveys the provenance of that particular thing.
No, but I hear you, no, it doesn't. I hear you, but, and we can absolutely work through it. You gotta attract a developer, there are many different steps to that, and a part of that process in terms of how we can make it happen. But I wouldn't rule it out on the front end, but give us a rep.
But we're talking about the city archives. It's the city archives.
Sure.
Which covers all sorts of things. And it is not dedicated to just African retention, of spiritual African practices. So once you put that in there, now we got people inside coming to view those things and interact with those things. And those things are actually, could be inconsistent with the retention of those African spiritual practices. And so that's where I have concerns. I'm willing to listen to how that
I think you have to,
but
yeah.
I'm not sure it does.
Well, I think we have time to work through that. We really do. I think that's subjective. That's your opinion, and I respect it and appreciate it. But I do believe that throughout this whole process, engagement and the like, you all will be able to determine what that ultimately looks like relative to the archives of the city. Sandra's next. We'll come to you.
Well, continuing on the questions about the archives, since that's the basis of, it sounds like the basis of the RFP.
No, it's
I don't
not.
think that's
Actually, that's not accurate
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
The basis of the RFP.
Well, the
is
basis-
to
Money to the
do-
table.
To stabilize the building, I understand.
Exactly, which
but
has nothing to do with archives.
with the
Yeah,
redevelopment.
so let's,
Yes, I'm sorry.
okay.
What happens to the old building is, and what is the reason, just to give me a little history, why do we need to move the archives, and, is it too small now, or is it?
Well, it's in a basement, it's not
The
sustainable.
archives came a couple of inches from flooding.
Flooding during Katrina, I don't know if you remember that, oh my goodness, are you kidding me?
Okay.
Are you kidding me?
Okay.
And even in Noma, you remember how close we were in Noma, the city park?
I
Yeah,
understand.
like building for the future, city preservation, we gotta do something with it. This is a thought.
And then the other question I would have is it possible for members of the community to be part of the procurement team or the listening team to the developers?
Yes, we mentioned that.
Not just come to present about the history of the area.
Right,
Yeah,
no,
we mentioned that.
We
Yes.
are doing something, we're proposing something that the city's never done before.
Yeah.
And that is have someone from the community be on the selection
Right.
committee.
Right.
And the intent is to, once again, RFQ, get qualifications, shortlist, then have the shortlist participants come in with their financial plan, with them, being more detailed into telling us how, we can do, how this can be done. And we talked about having it at Mahalia Jackson.
I'm adamant about, I'm big on being in spaces that you're planning for, being in those spaces. I wanted us to be right outside of it today, because I'm just big on that. Done it.
And then just one more thing. When we start talking about the municipal auditorium and this project or the development, will we talk about the whole site as well?
Yes.
Is that part of the?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank
Once again, that's what we talked about, it's gonna have to be implemented in phases,
Right.
but we want master plan.
Right, and we mentioned the involvement or inclusion of community and procurement and the like based on your question. That's also why I mentioned accountability partners, who's talking with such, because when you get into that process, you can taint it if an individual is tainted. We don't want any parts of that. Yes, ma'am, and then I got you.
So I have a couple questions, just for points of clarity. So what I heard was that there will be the archives and the intention is to include those in the basement of City Hall, third-party companies that are storing records for CPC, et cetera. Would those all be part of the new city archives in the auditorium?
It's not
it's a
necessarily
question.
clear at this point. As
Okay. Not
as
clear.
you mentioned, we have things stored in various places around
Yeah.
the city, from board planning and the like. We don't want to do that moving forward. That is the opportunity for this city.
Okay.
And basement of City Hall is sick. That's not sustainable either. So we will flesh that out, but it will not be overpowering, overtaking at all. This is just a way of wanting to preserve the history and the culture in the space that we're talking about is about culture of the city. Next
So
question.
the other two questions I had are just based on the things that were said. What I heard is that an extra 10 million is needed, and so that's why you're trying to creatively pair the archives
No,
and
that's
the
not
auditorium.
true at all.
What is
That's
the
not
total?
true.
What is the total amount needed above the FEMA?
Needed
dollars?
about what? We're talking about the first portion or
Yeah,
phase
like
of the
to
project to
secure the
stabilize the building.
Yes.
We have $34 million of FEMA $34 million on the table. We know that 34 million will not completely sustain or position that building, harden it, as
Right.
Vince would say, harden it the way that we want it to be.
Sure.
It'll take an additional roughly 10 million to get where we wanna be.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with
No,
our.
I understand that, but
It
I
has-
mean, just to do that piece, you're saying an additional 10
Just
million.
that piece, and let me just add this. Now, we're roughly saying, we're saying 10 million, that's what we've set aside. But what we also understand in this climate, inflation, capacity, and supply chain. And right now, bids that are going out for the city, I'm either getting no responses, the lower amount in terms of changes to the expenditure is 40%, meaning above.
50%.
And the highest is 87% that we're getting, meaning above the budget of the project. This is our reality. It's not going away anytime soon. It's not under our control, but it's a fact. So we're gonna factor that in as well.
Okay, so, in response to that, so.
I'm gonna come back to you, Ms. Deli. It'll
What if
be
the
after.
so the first thing is, how many seats on the selection committee, and the last piece is, so if, just say for that little piece, we need 45 million. What if the community can work with others to solicit those funds without the archives? Are you open to that?
We're open to it. Hey, I was open to it when I said, hey, not only create the vision, but show me the money.
Yeah.
And listen,
Right?
we're
Okay,
coming to
let's
you
not
guys,
change
we're not telling you we will put the archives in. We're saying this is what we are thinking about, okay? And it allows,
We're just trying to
by
clarify.
putting it there, it allows us, once again, to participate financially. It allows us to solve the problem of getting the archives into a safe place. We feel like it would complement.
And it allows the
So-
city to have some skin in the game by keeping and maintaining her assets in the ways that we've never done before.
And also, to be clear, as the mayor and Vince have said, there's actually two related scopes here, right? So just that, 40 to 50 million that they're referencing, that is for the core and shell of the building. That is just to stabilize and waterproof. There's also the redevelopment that we're talking about that, I think we've all seen estimates of anywhere from, $100, $200 million for this magnitude of a project. And so they're separate but related.
And that makes it more attractive to developers.
It does.
We're
Yep.
putting in 40
Right off the bat.
million.
Yep.
We're putting skin in the game. It matters. Yes, sir.
Why don't we just take the part of the archive that's related to the history of Black people and put it there? And then that'll kind of solve the issue. And I don't know if y'all can do that as a city body, but just take all of our manumission papers. Because my people's manumission papers in there, I probably got 7 great-great-grandmothers. Her freedom papers or whatever white boy bought her, that's in there too. How about we just separate it, take what's relevant to the parameter?
It could be a thought again. That's not fleshed out today at all. That's not even on the
We
table
can
today.
We give you guys,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
that's open.
You don't want no cool ass plan members coming in there.
You never know, man. When you get in the research, when you get in the research, you really gotta be careful because you don't even know.
Yep.
Mr. Sancho.
So, I heard the word partnership, and I want to know, is that what we are approaching? Because that's what we always wanted to be, in partnership, we always wanted that. So you said officially today that word partnership.
Well, I'm saying officially today that today we're in partnership. But we were in partnership a long time. But, absolutely. Okay, I lost the way. I held you down before, but I want to give this to others who hadn't spoke just yet. Pastor Manning?
So I think it's clear to everybody, or should be, that the municipal auditorium has suffered greatly because it has been left unprotected during storms and so forth, the roof. Are we sure at this time that it is not beyond the point that it can be completely restored again? I know it has to be, but because of the neglect that we've admitted, are we sure it is to a point that it doesn't have to be demolished?
If we act now,
Okay.
if we act now, but
I'm just getting clarification.
if we act now,
Just to make sure
if we act
on-
now,
if we
Pastor
act
Manning,
now,
yes.
yeah.
If we allow it to continue to sit as it's
Right.
been, then maybe not. Right? But right now, we only have right now.
It's fine right now.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Jock, did you have your hand? I thought I saw.
I wanted to amplify what Dow.
Okay, go ahead.
I probably spend as much time working in the archives as anybody in this room.
Okay.
And personally, I think that we need to consult with some
best practices on archivists and researchers. In my personal opinion, I don't think that space is appropriate for all of the archives, because it's not the highest and best use. For some of the archives, some of the stuff is interesting and consequential. A lot of it just needs to be retained for purposes of history and doesn't need to be stored on that site. But I understand the ability to leverage some additional capital funds. But I do think this whole idea of housing archives there, and whether it's principally gallery space, storytelling, and archives that the general public is interested in, I don't know that the archives that, historical researchers might be interested in.
Sure.
Once in 50 years, I don't know if that's an appropriate space and the highest and best use of this space on that sacred site.
We'll work through it and we'll see. But we will always engage experts relative to the uses that we need. And that has to be done regardless, because guess what? We need a place for our archives. So it will go through a process. It's been said it's not written in stone here, but there's some element of our archives that absolutely would be fitting for this space. I'm hands down on that. This all, we're not saying all.
It's probably less than 10%.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to get back to.
You finished? You have something else? Jacques, you have something else?
I did have a follow-up. So that would actually constitute a municipal office inside the building, the archives themselves. Because under the charter, the archives are held by the library.
Well, right. Under the library's charter, however, the city has a responsibility of creating that space in the archive. Well, we can work through that. Bottom line is we need it for the city. We care about our city. We care about our culture. We care about all the history. So we will work through that.
Yeah, but there are two separate archives though.
Yes.
There's the parochial archives, the records of civil district court and related records, and the municipal archives, and the charter deals with the municipal archives and not the archives of the parochial offices.
That's correct. And also the ability for us to advance technologies relative to our archives. That's an opportunity as well. Ms. Deli.
So I want to get back to the numbers, because that's really where the idea is coming from. So we have 34 roughly million with FEMA. The 10 that's needed to harden the building, is that already set aside? Do we have that in the
Working
bank?
towards that, yeah, we're using capital for that.
So the archives, if they came in, would just add the additional, 14, 17 million?
18 potentially.
18 million.
That's if it even happens, Ms. Deli, it's a separate track.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with FEMA.
Yeah,
Nothing
no,
to do
because
with that scope.
because that's separate money.
Yes.
But the crux of my question is whether or not the money to harden the building is already there.
Yes,
FEMA
ma'am.
Crescent City.
Bond money, yes.
So that makes the archives an option, not a necessity.
Correct. Archives is just something put on the table based on what the needs of the city are. How do we maximize our resources, leverage to deal with multiple problems and challenges we have in the city? How can we do more with less?
Yeah, I'm just trying
But
to
it's
get
not a given.
the financial picture, the pro forma together in mind.
Yeah, it's not a
And
given.
Mayor, let me just correct one thing. The 10 million in bonds
So it's
will
bond
have
money.
to be appropriated, okay? It will, and we are.
So realistically, it's not there yet.
Well, the money is there with bond money. We sold bonds. It's just appropriation.
Okay.
And that's something that we will do.
Okay, I know.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Just getting back to something Karen was asking about, the selection committee for this development is, what's the specific numbers of seats at the table for community engagement?
We're thinking about one seat for a public representative, and also we're looking at expanding it to get an expert on a finance expert to help us analyze the development proposals.
How many total seats
There's five in the standard city procurement process, 5 seats.
There's five
seats. And
Standard.
in the standard procurement, as Vince noted, we're adding a 6th seat for a community member. And then there's also the capacity, and we're still thinking through this element, for other expertise as Vince outlined. And so, you know, that can look like a number of different things. It can be around the financial analysis and how the project actually comes together and how we think about community benefits and the like from different proposals that come in. It can also look like, you know, a community engagement piece more formally, and having, you know, a group actually be something of a, you know, representative group that informs how the selection committee is doing its evaluation.
That's kind of what I was getting at, the concept here. Even if it comes to pass that it's 1/6 of this committee, and it has to be a representative that's, you know, essentially speaking for this group, right? And so, and have the ability to be a liaison to that, and make sure that it's not just a community member because it's somebody that lives in New Orleans, and it's like, oh, here's the community representative, and they're not somebody in this room. What's that?
All live in this community.
Right.
We need
Well, more
someone that's gonna
specifically,
be
and that's
able
what I was getting
to
at.
facilitate everything that we have discussed
Yeah.
over the last 2 years.
Right.
Sitting on the
structured-
selection committee.
Yeah.
So
So
we
the
need to
seven
make that
then?
really, really.
Yeah, like
Are you guys structured
Who breaks
in a
the
way
tie?
that you can
Who breaks
say,
the
this is
tie?
person?
Yes.
It's
Okay.
numerical.
Yes,
It's
yes,
ranked.
we are.
It's a scoring.
Yeah, I know
It's
it's
a-
ranked.
Yeah,
We don't have a problem. But And then Ms. if Mayor, you we can do still get a understand tie everything in the that rank. you have said so
The
far,
numbers are like
what you can and are willing to do, what, yeah, cause yeah, let me just say this
Please,
to
yeah,
the mayor.
sorry, yes.
Reiterate what Asetoa had said, our whole goal was to actually form a partnership with the city. We were not out to embarrass ourselves, the city of New Orleans, or your office, or you. We have worked in this community, all of us, for years, trying to get this done. We want an end to the fight that's ongoing, an unnecessary fight. So we understand everything that you have put out here today. We've been discussing it, talking about it, meeting with everyone to fully understand. And I think we wanted like 5 or 6 people on the selection committee, but there is one person that has risen to keep us all together, communicating with everyone and to help us understand the process we've been going through. And I'm just gonna say it right here, right now, that is this lady right here, Jackie Harris.
Yes.
Because she can get the information to all of us, understand it, dissect it. Because it's out there. She don't
On that
I just want to make sure that it's on the table, that it's clear, that we have work to do, that we have done the work. We have done the work. And the financial piece, if you would have gave us just a little bit more time, we may have had that. But that's on the city also. You all should be helping us find this money. Okay, Ms. Mayor?
I think that I am. And not only that, I think that I'm trying to save money and not have to go back to the federal government to do something on this building. I think that I'm doing that.
You are.
And I know, but I know that I am. And it's just aligned with my track record.
Okay, so-
I pick up cans that no one else has picked up to get things done with people.
As a little person that has picked up trash in this community for 30 years, so do we.
Yes.
We do the community
Yes.
work, and that's why we have been adamant about what we want to see done in Treme for over 50 years.
And we have the
We
opportunity.
would, and that's all we've been trying to get you to understand. This is all of our opportunity, and especially yours, because you will be the mayor that take it over. The litter, the trash, the line, the red line that was along North Rampart Avenue that stopped this community from prospering. When all the tourist dollars were starting to come in, we understand where we are. We understand, and we want you to do this because the other mayors, they ignored us and they came with their own plans without community input. Look at us here. We've
Well, I'm
all
proud
done
of
community.
you. I'm proud of you.
Okay, so
And Miss
Jackie,
Jackie, I think you've gotten we all
let me say this.
I was not prepared for this.
Neither was I, but today.
Neither was I.
But, it's the first, I'm originally from New Orleans, and I've been around a long time. And it's the first time in the history of New Orleans
that I've ever seen the French Quarter and the Treme community work together. And when that came about, everybody that you see here is seriously committed to completing the work and to getting this done. And I think this now is the timing is everything. And now is the time to get this done. And we're gonna fight, we're gonna cry, and we're gonna come together. But if everybody here, the city of New Orleans, as well as SOS, is committed to doing this, I also work for the Louis Armstrong Educational Foundation in New York. They are committed as well. And there are people standing, waiting in line to help us to raise the money that we need. But we have to have the correct documents and proposal to do that. And if we all come together and work on this, and look, y'all got to work with me on this like we've been.
You won't be alone.
Yeah, but I'm, you know, this is a joint effort here.
You know, it has to be, but you're right. Listen, I have no doubt in my mind, but we literally can pull this off.
Yes.
I have no doubt in my mind in this city, international, look, I'm all there.
This is something really short. It's able to Cheryl and Jackie said the reason when you asked us to look for the money, we was doing that, but we don't own the property. That's why we want the partnership, because we can go and advocate as long as we know that we got the city saying, okay, they are authorized to solicit on our behalf. That's why we kept going with the partnership. I hope you observe. I just want to take this up. Jackie, you just moved me because you just got
She don't
never do that.
She don't
I hope you recognize that in this fight, that we're using the word fight, the fight was never against you. I just hope you just know that. We was just committed to that. This is where we draw the line in the sand. We just
But it was also a political, the season was there. I get it, I know.
Okay, but it's never, we were always committed to running a movement that was reflecting that. We want to make sure that we see this as your legacy. This is what we see. We see this. I'm telling you, I got this thing. Since you went to DC, you saw what DC did. You saw what they had about New Orleans. You'll split it.
Oh, I was fired up.
I know you'll split it they had about us.
I was fired up. I said, no, we doing this.
So to hear you say this, it's just a long time coming because we is old. That's all you mean.
I'm 66.
Over.
Yeah. 67.
You don't see no young people. Not that we solicit.
They have some, but this was the eldest movement.
We solicited young people, but they didn't approve. Well, that is how we were trying to fight.
Teach them how to organize.
Young girl. But I just hope that we can take this as a beginning, as a fresh beginning, to begin the completion of the work.
Yeah.
We already know it's going to be, and we know you can do it. We know you
never
can do it with
doubted
us.
you.
See, we know you can do it with us.
We
Yeah.
can do it
We
together.
can do it collectively.
Together. Yes.
Well, I'm all in.
Ooh, shake a hand, Jackie, shake a hand.
We know Schwartz can do it too, because he's been here since post.
Oh, yeah, Schwartz can
The
do it
big
too.
green
That's
wave.
right.
I know who he is.
That's right.
I know who
Little
he
bit.
is.
Go back. We did wrong.
We're gonna make some stuff happen, guys.
So I just want to gain some clarification on one point with the city statement that the things are separate. It's separate in that the city putting skin in the game, the $10 million skin in the game because of the archive.
No, that's 18 million. 18 million is a line.
That has nothing to do with it. The hardening of the site, the building, to stabilize regardless of whatever.
Yes.
Right.
Like that has to happen.
That has to happen.
So in order to complete that as best we can, we know that additional 10 million will be needed now. That's what we're saying now, but inflation is real.
It could absolutely change to be more, I see it going down.
Right. No, so what my point is that the city has skin in the game without the archives, because this building is for the citizens. So we don't necessarily need the archives for the city to contribute skin into the game.
That's what we've said, yes.
Right.
Yeah, yes.
So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that, because it came across as though the only way the city can have skin in the game is if the archives are in the game.
No.
And I just want to make sure that that's not the case, and we were clear understanding that archives doesn't necessarily have to be in there for the city to have skin in the game.
That's exactly, you're exactly right. But let me tell you this, what I said after that was this. I believe, just from my position that I'm in and what I've seen, I believe to ensure that the city of New Orleans continues to maintain her assets, and for whoever the leadership is, 20 years from now, whatever, that building is a priority and has some use. Of course, as we're talking, it should be enough, no doubt. But I was just only thinking, what other things that we can do to ensure. Now, the community has to make accountability partners is what we'll have to be. But I'm just looking down the line to ensure that the city of New Orleans and its leadership continues to maintain her assets, not create this mecca only for it to look like nothing was there 20 years from now. 50 years from now.
Right.
It's not the same.
And so when we look at, and we have some models here to show that they are sustainable. The aquarium, right?
Not the city though.
No, hear me out. As far as the aquarium, city, millage went out to help build the aquarium years ago.
Yeah.
And the aquarium has been self-sustaining basically ever since, because of the product that it puts out.
Not self-sustaining, however, because we still have
We
a lot of
know.
money in it. Anyway,
Yeah.
I get your point.
And so what I'm saying is, if we create this cultural mecca, or cultural center, that attracts the people to New Orleans, or the tourists, when they come to New Orleans, they want to go see and spend their money to see the culture of New Orleans. We're not going to be, it's going to be able to be self-sustaining in order to take care of itself.
Well, our goal is, regardless, for it to be self-sustaining.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
like the ultimate goal, regardless.
Right.
So,
We have to
yes,
work through it, Dad.
we have to, and that's a lot of the opportunity we have as we shape the financial metrics and the like.
Yes.
So, yes, to your point, no, it doesn't have to have the archive, but if we're thinking about our city, if we're thinking about her future, her history, and the preservation of it, we have to be mindful of the needs for it.
Yes.
So even if it's not this, we have to be mindful of it. Okay. Yes, sir.
Speak up, Jared.
I'm president of the Tremaine Neighborhood Association. And I guess first thing I want to say is just thank you for coming to, this conclusion. And I think all of here at SOS, the Tremaine community at large, just had a sigh of relief, from what you guys have shared today.
Yes.
So I just want to start off and just say thank you for that. Very much appreciate it. I'm sorry. But also, the Tremaine community specifically is not even taking a back seat, haven't even invited to take the ride over a decade, over generations, as homes were destroyed, the whole thing. So one of the things that I hope that your team keeps in mind is just the inequities and how equitable this project needs to be, not for the city at large, but for the people of Tremaine who live in Tremaine, who displaced in Tremaine, the whole 9 yards. The community, while it's thriving, obviously being gentrified, depending on how you look at it, there's major challenges in the neighborhood. Home affordability, is a major challenge. Life and safety, you name it. And, to Dow's point, Cheryl's point, and the others, in terms of, how this project evolves over time, I'm very curious to see how, this project is going to be an equitable project, not just from having to see that who's selected. No offense, but to me, that's like a minimum that has to be there. But truly the hard part in how you're going to spread the wealth, across the city, but Treme specifically, and not forget about us because Andrew, myself, Cheryl, we live in this neighborhood.
Sure.
Right? There's gonna be more traffic flows and all these other things.
Sure. Well, I think, first of all, I appreciate your comments, all of them, from start to finish. I think that we have, all of us have a responsibility to ensure that this investment, that it is one that creates an equitable display of those resources throughout Treme. This is the time to do that. However, we have a real opportunity with this project to ensure whether they're proper set aside, how you dissect it, we can do it, this is it. And we do have that responsibility, but at the same time, we need to make sure that city council, land use, city talk, this is where the action is. Making sure in terms of the overall fabric, the zoning, streets, all that's land use. And making sure that those protections are even built in now on the front end, because once development starts, you're really behind the 8 ball. But we have an opportunity in being proactive, and right now, to, as we're working through the process, to also work with the council has to be folded into to ensure that the equitable distributions actually happen. And that speaks to home ownership, set aside in terms of resources, funding, whether there's a tip, around the area, where the money that's generated from it goes back into the area. Those are things that can be created, and utilizing our legislative branch to do that. That's where the real action happens. Standing up giving speeches is no action. It's no action. So this is what we're about, some action, and I know, me and my team, we're on the same page with putting in and building in the protections that are necessary. And let me tell you, we have to be, this city, we have to be unapologetic about how we move, because we are the most Afrocentric city in the United States of America. That's a fact. So how we move, and that's the attitude that I have. I'm not gonna apologize for set-asides that have to be right here. I'm not doing that, because we also know the injustices, but then opportunities. So we will continue to walk together and work together. That's what we want. Okay, yes, sir.
Being the company, one or maybe two of us in here who actually grew up in the footprint, who the real stakeholder in this process, who was displaced from this process. My mother's father was angry, which made me angry. I didn't even know why at the time, but as time evolved, I learned quickly. I became active when I was 12 years old because of that, which was supposed to have been a civic center.
Wow.
It was never designed to be a park. It became a park by default. And even now, today, it's a very, very passive park. And we've done some place-based, asset-based, space-based planning since 2012. And even further beyond. But there are some short-term things that can happen in this park, and you're aware of it. We presented it to you once before. And that can be done on a short-term basis. And they are still interested in New Orleans as a venue for what was proposed to the city. Now, it was proposed prior to you becoming mayor as well.
Yes.
So this is nothing new. But that can happen even before all of this RFQ process even happens. Because all it takes is a public-private partnership to get that done.
Yeah. And what part is that?
And that was 11th, right? That was the
okay.
Yeah, the 11th project. They're still very much interested in New Orleans. And in fact, they're coming here in August to have a series of meetings again.
Okay.
To revisit with you.
Okay. Well, we'll follow up on that. We can follow up on that. But this RFP process is gonna have to roll.
Oh, no.
Okay, and to your point, we can do that, but we'll revisit where you're coming from, but also stay focused on this release in June.
And the other focus was being that from the footprint, the folks who were in the footprint deserve to be benefactors of that footprint, whatever it becomes.
And we need to also flesh out what that means.
Yes.
Because some, you know, the talk is one thing, but literally get to the nuts and bolts. I think that's our opportunity. I'm all in. All right, we're gonna be wrapping it up, Miss Sabrina.
Close it out. I'm not gonna preach, but we've said it over and over and over again. I think there was a struggle for me with your decision. And so, the awesomeness of how God works is that He brings us, that's why that circle is so strong, because it begins and ends in the same place, right? We may stretch it all kind of ways, but eventually that it begins and ends in the same place. For this group of people, and then you know we all have strong personalities, but there was a level of respect. And I've been organizing since as far as the Freedom Ride, since I was 10 years old. And I saw them do it with Aretha, A. Trap Brown. I saw them do it. How all of these strong personalities came together, but there was a bow down with respect. It's like we stayed in our lane when somebody spoke and was telling us what we needed to hear. And so, for this moment in time to come, and we're coming in truth, becoming in honor, becoming in love, becoming in respect, and becoming standing on our ancestors' shoulders. And we say thank you.
Pastor Manny, maybe close us with a brief prayer of thanksgiving and unity.
Yes.
Thanks for asking for that, John.
It is good to end in prayer. Can we join hands and circle up?